November 2nd. Welcome back, everybody. John Arvosis here from Washington, D.C. with the Arvosis Report. Here to talk to you about the latest news from Israel and Ukraine. And you know what? Didn't print out my notes. I think maybe I need those. Today has been a little bit of a wacky day because my internet was off. They were fixing it all day, and I wasn't convinced it was going to be on in time. And they finally did turn it on, but it went on 20 minutes ago. So I do have notes, but I didn't print them. Hang on. Print these notes double-sided. There we go. All right. Waiting for my notes to print. That was too funny. I'm debating. I'm going to wait for TikTok for a minute until my notes print so I don't look like a lunatic running back. I know you guys better than the TikTok people. So TikTok's more of a random crowd. But yes, and hopefully it's not out of paper too, just to add to the fun. Don't be out of paper. All right. It's printing. We'll give it a minute. Yes. No. Well, I mean, they were fixing the neighborhood. Supposedly they're upgrading the neighborhood. So but it was off all day and finally went on literally 20 minutes ago. Because otherwise, would not have been good. So it should be fine now. But because of it, I hadn't printed my notes because the notes, of course, everything's internet now. Your notes, of course, communicate with the printer by internet, right? By Wi-Fi. So I couldn't even use my Wi-Fi. My printer. All right, hang on. I think it's ready. The microphone. That was straight out of Big Fat Greek Wedding when she's like, ah. All right. There we go. Stay there, you. All right. Lots of pages of notes. I like to write the page numbers on the notes too, but I've had no time for any of this. Not no time, but it messed me up with the crazy internet today. All right. Let me get rolling on TikTok. Hang on. Go live. And then, as always, we'll wait a minute. All right. Boom. There we go. TikTok. Boom. There we go. All right. Oops. My mouse. Where's my pen? All right. Hey, TikTokers. There we go. All right. I'm going to get my notes ready here. Since we don't start for a minute anyway, give a little hello. My Big Fat Greek Wedding is a bit too, hey, TikTokers, is a bit over the top. But a lot of it is true. But a lot of it's over the top, but a lot of it's true. So, she's not wrong. It's funny, too, because she's Canadian, but, it's the same thing. All right, I think that's good. But it's the same thing. It's very funny, actually. Hey, TikTokers, welcome. We're just sort of chatting a minute, waiting for folks to join us. The one thing that really made me laugh with Big Fat Greek Wedding, we're talking about Big Fat Greek Wedding, because, I had my microphone on and stepped away, and I did the wow with the microphone pulling me back. Thank you, Courtney. The one funny thing about Big Fat Greek Wedding that I really laughed at was when she tells the aunt or whatever that her fiance is vegetarian, and she goes, "It's not meat, it's lamb." And my mom had done something like that with my sister-in-law when she first came to meet us before they were married. And I told her, I said, "Mom, she's vegetarian," because Mom was making some big meat dish because we're Greek. I said, "She's vegetarian," and she goes, "She's gonna eat what I give her. This is my house." And I was like, "Mom, vegetarianism doesn't work that way." Thank you, Darian. I'm like, if they don't eat meat, they literally don't eat meat. It's gross to them. It's not like they're being rude, but it made me laugh. It was just like it's not meat, it's lamb. Anyway, hey John, thank you for that. So how are we all doing today? Woo. Keto's like, yeah, keto. Okay, I got to admit, keto and some of the other diets I'm a little less forgiving of. Thank you, Jetta. You know what I mean? People have allergies. There's nothing they can do about it, Some of the crazier diets. The only thing is it drives me a little nuts when people, I'll say that even for vegetarians, hey guys, welcome. We're talking vegetarianism and stuff. The one thing I will say is if you're vegetarian, you need to help people with dinner parties because it is a pain in the ass to have a dinner party and to find out somebody's a vegetarian because all of a sudden you're changing your entire menu and it's a royal pain in the ass. And I feel like vegetarians, if you're going to come to somebody's houses for dinner, you mention it. Thank you, Alex. And you literally should say, so-and-so's vegetarian, but if, it's up to you, but they always like to bring this little dish to supplement. I'd be like, oh, thank you. Yes. All right, there we go. Is it difficult to be vegetarian in Greece? I would think so. Hey, Gamma. I mean, you'll be eating a lot of very nice salads, but also depends how vegetarian you are. Depends how vegetarian, right? I mean, if you can eat cheese and stuff, then you're in better shape. All right, guys, I'm going to get rolling. So welcome all. John Aravosis here in Washington, D.C. This is my show where we daily, thank you, Mark, where we daily talk about the latest news from Ukraine and Israel both. Today, I've actually got more Israel news than Ukraine news. Surprise, surprise. You know what? I'll start with the Ukraine news today then. People were saying I should mix up. Just so folks know. So normally, the way we do the show is I would normally cover Ukraine. I've been doing it since the war broke out a year and a half ago. Plus, thank you, Chad and Corporal. But then when the Israel stuff started a couple of weeks ago, thank you, Chief. I wanted to cover that as well. I do find a lot of commonalities in the stories, Russia, America, all this kind of stuff. Iran, certainly. Thank you, Ellie. So today what I'm going to do is I'll start with Ukraine because the Ukraine news is shorter than the Israel, Gaza, Hamas news. So we'll do it to anybody, just so you know, and to mix it up a little bit for our Ukraine regulars. The way the show works is I will go through the news first. Second half of the show, I will take your guys' questions, comments, whatever. During the show, I very much appreciate your gifts and all of that because I do this for free. Thank you, 863 and Chief. I do this for free, and what allows me to do this is to basically have you guys help me pay the bills. I do this full time, doing all the Ukraine stuff and now Israel and Gaza and all that too. So I appreciate the gifts. I will always try to do a shout out when I see the big gifts on TikTok, like that. Thank you, 863 Tom, like the hat. And super chat and super stickers as well. Thank you, Ellie. I will do a shout out for those. And final point, super chats on YouTube are questions that you pay for. And because you pay for them, I will always get to that as the next thing I talk about. So thank you, guys. And thank you also for the subscribers on TikTok and YouTube, all the SNN folks on TikTok, and all the greenies on YouTube. Brendy, Susan, Greg. I'm sure there's more scrolling back here. Jay, Sally, Carl. So thank you all as well. Thank you, Adventures and James. All right, let's start with Ukraine, like I said, and then we'll do Israel next. Thank you, Marcy. So today is day 616 of Vladimir Putin's special 3-day military operation. Thank you, Big John, in Ukraine. Make sure you hit the like button and follow me on TikTok and YouTube. So Russian forces attempted to advance in Volodar direction in Donetsk Oblast. So basically in Donetsk, which is the eastern province, the Russians attempted to advance today. They were fought off by the Ukrainians. Zelensky says the Russians suffered heavy losses. In Avdiivka, so Avdiivka, which is also in the same area there in Donetsk. Let me get my map. Avdiivka is the town we keep talking about in eastern Ukraine, where there's been just kind of massive fighting. It's another one of those rather odd towns where, I mean, it definitely has some strategic significance because it's overlooking Donetsk, which is a big city in eastern Ukraine that is occupied by the Russians. So Avdiivka, which is northwest of there, does matter. But it's interesting because it's one of those where the Russians are pouring lots of men and lots of equipment, and it's, still not entirely clear why, to be honest, but that's fine. Institute for the Study of War, big defense think tank that I always like here in Washington, D.C., they said that Russia's troops are likely preparing for another wave of highly attritional infantry-led ground assaults on Ukrainian positions in Avdiivka. What that means, basically, in order to translate that, because I've been reading about this recently too, they're using more of the prisoners again, and it looks like they're planning on doing what they did before, when they took the prisoners and they just poured them at the battles, like especially in Bakhmut, where they just had them run at the Ukrainians and the Ukrainians would mow them down. But the idea was if you throw enough prisoners, maybe you're able to, break through. That sounds like what the Russians are planning on doing at Avdiivka again, basically kind of a death march of their troops against the Ukrainians. The British Ministry of Defense says that the Russians lost at least 4 long-range surface-to-air missiles surface-to-air missile launchers to Ukrainian strikes over the last week. That is a big deal. One of them was in Crimea. Thank you, Big Hawk, in the South Crimea, right? Territory down here. And 3 of them were in Luhansk, so over here, territory the Russians have been occupying for a while now. This is a big deal because the Russians rely, ISW was saying, the Russians rely to a big degree, they really prioritize their high-tech long-range surface-to-air missiles. The fact that they've lost 4 of them means that the Russians are probably going to have to dig into some supplies they're using elsewhere, like elsewhere in Russia, to protect basically the rest of their country. And it's probably going to degrade their defense basically in the rest of the country, which is good. So that's kind of interesting. A group of senior Republicans, this was interesting too. So a senior group of Republicans in the U.S. Congress wrote to Biden, urging him to send longer range weapons to Ukraine. As you guys know, thank you, Pilar. Biden recently sent ATACMS missiles to Ukraine. These are the missiles that can be launched from the HIMARS system, which is very nice. They don't have to be launched from planes, like the British and French cruise missiles have to be actually launched from a plane. These can be launched from the ground. The problem is, people have been pushing for these missiles forever for Ukraine. Biden finally comes through a few weeks ago. And of course, he gives Ukraine the shorter range missiles, not the longer range ones that everybody wanted. Because, I'm not sure if I am or I'm not going to go on another Biden rant today. I might. So we gave them missiles that can go 100 miles. They need the missiles that can go 200 miles. For some stupid reason, Biden's pretending like we don't have enough. Maybe we don't have enough. Thank you, Kronos. But as I've said, meaning we just don't have enough in the U.S. We've got to save them for ourselves. That could be true. The only thing is, if that were the truth, why didn't Biden say that right away? For the last year, the administration has made like 3 different excuses. One of them was escalation. It'll anger Putin. Escalation, right? Then we heard, we can't give. Oh, I know what it was. It was escalation if we give missiles that go that far. And then the Brits and the French give missiles that go that far, and Putin doesn't, escalate, meaning go nuclear, right? Then we're told, if the Ukrainians get weapons that can go 200 miles, they're going to attack Russia proper, Russian territory, and there'll be a nuclear war, and we don't trust the Ukrainians. So then the Brits and the French give the Ukrainians cruise missiles that go 200 miles or 300 kilometers. And what happens? The Ukrainians promise not to strike Russia itself, Russian territory, Moscow. Thank you, Cinderella. And they don't, right? Thank you, Ruben, for the heart. And they don't. So now Biden's going, okay, I said I couldn't give him weapons that can go this far because Putin would declare nuclear war. He didn't. I said we weren't going to give, if we gave them weapons that go 200 miles, the Ukrainians, being, I guess, bad people, will use them to attack Russia itself. They didn't. So suddenly, thank you, Kronos. Suddenly we discover that we just don't have enough of these weapons in America. That's why we can't give them. We've got the shorter range weapons we can give them, but the longer range, we just don't have enough. And as far as I'm concerned, it's like talking to a little kid, frankly. By the time the 3rd different excuse comes up, they're lying. Because if the problem was we don't have enough weapons, they would have told us, he wouldn't have given us the BS excuse of, for example, why would you, the last excuse you would put forward is we're afraid of Putin. You're not going to say that publicly as your first excuse. Secondly, the first excuse you're going to give isn't going to be, we don't trust the Ukrainians, right? We're afraid they're going to use them against Russia anyway. You give the real excuse, which is much nicer. Thank you, Tick, which is, we'd love to help you. Of course we trust you. Of course we're not afraid of Putin. We just don't have enough. But, right, again, they're lying, guys. And this is what pisses me off with this. In any case, 4 top Republicans, I would say the 4 top defense Republicans in Congress, the top Republicans on the Foreign Relations and Armed Services Committee in the House and the Senate, all wrote to Biden saying that he needs to give the longer range weapons. Now, what is also good about this is, what I like about it is you are seeing top defense Republicans, top foreign policy and top defense Republicans in the Congress pushing for more weapons for Ukraine, not less, not fewer, right? So that's good in principle, but new Gallup poll. So I don't know that I trust Gallup polls. My friends who know polls better than I are never big fans of Gallup, but there's a new Gallup poll that isn't great for Ukraine. 41% of Americans say the U.S. is doing too much for Ukraine. That's risen from 24% at the beginning of the war, of August 2022, 29% in June of just this year. And now it's 41% think we're doing too much. 33% say the U.S. is doing this is even worse. 33% say the U.S. is doing the right amount. 25% say the U.S. isn't doing enough. So that would be 33 plus 25, 58. That's still not terrible. 58% say we're giving the right amount of aid or we should be giving more aid. That's still pretty good. That's still pretty good. The problem becomes Republicans and even independents. 62% of Republicans say we're doing too much to support Ukraine. Thank you, who is this, Aquarius? 44% of independents. Again, the problem is nobody is trying to woo them. Mitch McConnell, who's the Republican leader in the Senate, occasionally makes good speeches, very good speeches about this. Biden gave one freaking address. He gave one freaking address to Congress, not to Congress, from the White House after Israel was attacked. And that's it. He has done nothing, very little to sell Ukraine aid to the American people. I've said this from the beginning. Thank you, Kronos. And I'll say it again. He's afraid that if he really tries to sell the aid, he can't walk away. That basically, if he tells people, thank you, Sexseed, this is an existential threat for Ukraine. Putin is committing genocide, right? This is a threat for America if Putin wins. How does Biden then walk away and settle for some agreement where Putin gets land? Because this is what Biden wants, by the way, I'm convinced. He wants to give away land in Ukraine to Putin. Certainly Crimea, absolutely Crimea, and maybe a little more. That's Biden's plan. I'm convinced that's his plan. How do you do that if you've told the American people this is an existential threat to Ukraine, that Putin cannot win this war or it'll be a disaster for the West, right? I mean, if Putin cannot win this war, you can't let Putin get away with winning territory because to me, that's winning the war. So I think Biden is absolutely afraid that Biden wants a compromise. He wants a stalemate. He wants Russia and Ukraine to both give up and have to reach some diplomatic deal. Well, if my main point here is, if Biden were to push for Ukraine aid, he would have to explain that Putin is evil, that Putin is a war criminal. How do you reach a deal with a war criminal? How do you let a war criminal get away with it? At the time he said Putin was a war criminal, you'll notice there hasn't been any talk from the Biden administration about Putin being a war criminal since the indictment many long months ago. Hasn't been anything since then, right? He wanted a tie. He got a tie. He wanted a stalemate. He got a stalemate. It just really pisses me off because I'm getting very concerned that we may be at a stalemate in Ukraine, and it's exactly what Biden wanted. And congratulations. I've been predicting this for, a year now. A year and a half, actually. Kind of ticks me off. In any case, more Ukraine news. Oh, the Ukrainian National Agency on Corruption Prevention added Nestle, thank you, Andre and Aquarius, added Nestle to its list of international sponsors of war for its continued business in Russia. Nestle still refuses to pull out of Russia at this late date. Thank you, Ernie. Russian vehicles not registered with the Latvian authorities by mid-February, so that's 4 months from now, 3 months, will be seized and sent to Ukraine, according to the Latvian parliament announced today. Germany has handed over 12 armored personnel carriers, 2 air surveillance radars, 7 reconnaissance drones, and other defensive assistance in its latest aid package to Ukraine. And finally, North Korea may have provided Russia with short-range ballistic missiles, anti-tank missiles, portable anti-air missiles, rifles, rocket launchers, mortars, shells, and more, according to a South Korean military official. Recently, we heard, thank you, Kronos, the concern that North Korea had given a million artillery rounds to Russia. Now the concern is that they may have also given them missiles as well. Thank you, Don. Okay, that is it for Ukraine. Like I said, there wasn't a lot of Ukraine news today, guys. Usually we have, it's funny, the last week or so, we've had a lot more Ukraine news. Okay, that's it for the Ukraine news. I will just do the quick pitch again. Please do keep the gifts coming. We're gonna do Israel news next. Thank you, Tigger. Please do keep the gifts coming. As you guys know, I do this for a living, do it full time, and your support pays the bills and helps me keep doing this. So please do keep the gifts coming on TikTok. Keep the gifts coming on YouTube. Let's keep going. Thank you, Kronos, for getting it rolling on TikTok again. Let's do Israel and Gaza next. Quick sip of water. Oh, and Saturday morning, remember Saturday morning, we will do our coffee talk, which is what I do. Thank you, Jetta. Every Saturday morning-ish. Next weekend, I'm flying in a week, but usually Saturday mornings, usually at 11 a.m. Eastern. Thank you, Ellie and Kronos. I do a show for the paid subscribers. Thank you, Tigger. This week, I'm going to be doing it at 10 a.m. Eastern US because 11 o'clock, I want to take a yoga class I haven't taken forever. Yoga class that I was taking online during COVID, and then I stopped doing it when COVID was over, and I want to take it again. So it's 11 a.m. on Saturday. So this Saturday, I will be doing 10 a.m. Thank you, Alex. See, I told you I recognize your name. I will be doing 10 a.m. Eastern Time US for the paid TikTok subscribers on TikTok. And for all the rest of you, we'll be doing it on YouTube. Not YouTube. We'll be doing it on Discord. YouTube. I screwed up. Discord. So on Discord, we'll be doing the YouTube, Twitch, Ko-fi, Discord, all the monthly subscribers. Thank you, Cliff. I like me too. Thank you, Carl. Carl had a super sticker. All right, let's do Israel now. Israel announced that it has encircled Gaza City. Thank you, Andre. I'll get out my Gaza map here. So I may print it again because the ink's running, but it's good enough. So the big news today was that Israel has, let me get my pen. It looks like Israel has, okay, so Gaza City. I don't know if it's the big city or one of two big cities. I don't know if it's the largest, but it's one of the two big cities in Gaza. Right up here, Gaza City. This is southern Gaza, right? This is northern Gaza. This is Egypt. All of this is Israel. The Israelis have been invading through here. They already had established sort of a little beachhead near a hotel. I'm forgetting if it's somewhere around here, the hotel. And they've been cutting across here. And I think they've come a lot of the way already here. So they pretty much are almost to the coast and basically have encircled Gaza City. Now, the question is why? They certainly have increased in the last day, tonight, their bombardment of Gaza and of the region. I read you a little bit here. I think this was from CNN, I think. Israeli troops are now focusing, thank you, Adventures. Israeli troops are now focusing on finding entrances to the tunnel network used by Hamas's militants and seeking to kill them while they are still below ground. To maintain a tight siege on Gaza City, Israel would also need to destroy tunnels that run from north to south that could be a lifeline for Hamas. So it sounds, thank you, Cinderella. Appreciate that. I'm still trying to figure out what the exact plan is with circling Gaza City itself. They clearly, cutting Gaza in half, in principle, if you cut the tunnels in half, thank you, Annie, right? I mean, if you cut, and it's funny, the stories aren't really talking yet too much about why it is that Ukraine's cut Gaza in half, but also encircling Gaza City. Okay, if you cut Gaza in half, right, and you've got troops here, that means you can also blow things up or whatever one does. I don't know if Callum's here. Maybe he can tell us what one does to basically blow up underground tunnels. Okay. But if I'll get rid of Cinderella. Thank you, Cinderella, for that. I'll get it out of the way so we can see it. But if Israel controls the ground here along where my pen is, then they can blow up along where the pen is and blow up the underground tunnels. Well, if Israel blows up the underground tunnels going across here, Hamas down here cannot get to reinforce Hamas up here, and vice versa. Hamas troops up here cannot reinforce troops down here. If Israel can blow up the tunnels, they're stuck where they are. Now, they still have tunnels here and tunnels here, right? But they can't actually cross the tunnels, which is a really good thing. So for Israel's perspective, I think cutting across Gaza makes total sense. I mean, what I mean is I think we can guess why it is they're going across Gaza. I'm still not sure what the goal is in circling Gaza itself. Because again, if you do a siege, if you're doing a siege, potentially you're causing even more pain. Then again, well, I don't know. I'm not sure. I really don't know, guys. I'm not sure. I think hopefully the next day or two, we'll see more about this. Are you trying to stop people from coming in and out of Gaza, right? Are you trying to stop goods and services from coming in and out of Gaza? But in principle, the goods were already cut off, right? We already know food, fuel, and was it water is been cut off for getting into Gaza overall. Thank you, Tigger. Right. So I'm still kind of trying to figure out, I'm still trying to figure this out. Anyway, a little more here. Israel's military said Thursday it struck several Hezbollah targets in Lebanon. Thank you, Alex. We know there's been more fire back and forth from Lebanon. It hasn't heated up that much, which is a good thing. Hang on here. Let me see. And Hezbollah's leader is expected to weigh in on the war tomorrow in a speech. Now, that's going to be interesting. Hezbollah, where is my map here? 1 second here. I'm trying to find my other, I may have buried it here. Oh, here it is. Here it is, my Israel map. Okay, so Hezbollah is the other terrorist group we're worried about at the moment. Gaza, Israel is yellow. Gaza's down here. This is the West Bank. This is Jordan. This is Egypt, Syria, Lebanon. So Lebanon overall, good country, government, nice people, not in control of the country. It's a failed state. It's a disaster, and it's very sad because people say Lebanon was a beautiful place. And maybe still is a beautiful place, but it's a wreck at this point. Hezbollah, terrorist group, controls southern Lebanon. The concern has been that Hezbollah might actually invade, or at the very least unleash their several 100,000 rockets against Israel, and that would be a problem. It would make Israel have to basically fight a very large war in the north and a very large war in the south, okay? What has been happening so far, and I'm going to get to it in a second. I'll get to it in a second. It's further down on the list. Hezbollah's been holding off. They've been firing some rockets, but they've not launched the big attack against Israel. And actually, Hamas has been getting kind of ticked off at both Hezbollah, its sister terrorist group, and at the Iranians for not basically attacking Israel like they thought they would. So that's been very interesting to date. But we should get a little bit more of a sense of what Hezbollah is up to tomorrow. Adjusting my light here. Tomorrow, when their leader, as I said, will be giving a speech. Quick sip of water. More foreign nationals made their way out of Gaza today. And into Egypt through the Rafah border crossing, which is in southern Gaza, right with the border with Egypt. 341 crossed today. Figure includes American citizens, other citizens as well. Now, one thing to remember with this is, thank you, SV. Very pretty, the fall leaves. One thing to remember with this is you've got, and I think the number now with Israel might be 249 hostages, the hostages that were taken on October 7th. The number keeps being revised as they discover more and more people that are not dead, are not missing, but actually were taken hostage. But you've also got about 5,000 to 7,000 other people who are basically hostages of Hamas. Hamas has 5,000 to 7,000 foreigners, non-Palestinians, that were living in Gaza or visiting Gaza that they will not let leave. They are hostages. They are captives. As I said before, they may not have their hands tied. They may not have a gun to their head, but Hamas is refusing to let them leave. And again, they're using it for leverage. They're using them as human shields. In essence, they're also using them as leverage to try to get Hamas terrorists released from Israeli jails. So the fact that 341 got let out, that's great. I believe yesterday there was a similar number somewhere in the 300s that got let out. That's great. That puts us maybe at 700. The total number there is going to be 5,000 to 7,000 that still need to get let out. So that's a big deal. Biden last night called for a humanitarian pause. This is not really news. A woman got up during a Biden fundraising speech, and she was a Jewish peace person, a peace activist, got up and yelled at him, I demand you call for a ceasefire right now. And Biden said he supports a humanitarian pause. Now, everyone's reporting it as news. It's not really news. This is what the Biden administration had already proposed at the United Nations. So we already knew that was their position, right? They proposed it like last week at the UN. A humanitarian pause is different from a ceasefire. A ceasefire is Hamas and Israel are at war, or Gaza and Israel are at war. And a ceasefire is both sides stop fighting. They just stop. And they start negotiating, whatever they do, but they stop fighting. And hopefully the stop fighting is indefinite, right? But they try to negotiate peace. And so it could be indefinite, right? A humanitarian pause is we are going to stop fighting for 2 days or 3 days or even 10 hours. This happened in Ukraine. At one point, they stopped fighting for 10 hours in one town so people could escape or something like, or the Red Cross could go in, right? So that's what humanitarian pause is the battle. It is a temporary ceasefire. It could be a ceasefire across the entire region. It could be a ceasefire in one area. So they could say, let's have a ceasefire in northern Gaza for a set number of hours or a set number of days to get fuel and food in, to let refugees leave, to let people who are sick leave, or something like that. So that's what a humanitarian pause is. Anyway, Biden endorsed it last night, but as I said, we knew he supported this a week ago when the U.S. was pushing this at the United Nations. The head of the main United Nations agency in Gaza, UN Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees, said today that its fuel supplies are completely depleted and the last remaining public services in Gaza have completely collapsed. Remember that the New York Times had reported a couple of days ago, speaking to Arab officials and Western officials both, but the Arab officials had confirmed this, that Hamas, which is a terrorist group, but they also are the government of Gaza, they have been stockpiling food, fuel, and medicine for a long time, and they are refusing to give it to the citizens of Gaza. This is the government of Gaza. They're refusing to give it to the citizens of Gaza. This is why Israel has said it has done the blockade of Gaza and that it won't let food, fuel, and medicine get in, because Israel says it will first go to the Hamas, which is probably true. Well, actually is true, judging by the fact that Hamas, we now have confirmation, has food, fuel, and medicine and is refusing to give it to people. Well, NBC News confirmed the story today and came out and said that, yes, Hamas has stockpiled 200,000 gallons of fuel to supply rockets and support electricity for its underground tunnels. Again, I'm divided on this one, which will piss off some of you, but I don't care. This is why Israel's blockading the food and fuel, because Hamas will take it first. Now, the problem is, right, I'm not a big fan of cutting off hospitals and having hospitals stop working and people die. That's not good. There ought to be some way to get humanitarian aid to help the hospitals. But at the same time, Hamas is stealing it. And if you're at war with Hamas, it's a problem. Now, interestingly enough, Christiane Amanpour of CNN asked the UN agency that was complaining about Israel's blockade and about the fuel, she asked them specifically about Hamas hoarding the fuel. She asked the relief about reports that Hamas was storing and hoarding fuel. The relief agency head said this: "What I can tell you is that no one right now is taking care of the civilian need. When it comes to the fuel, I have no idea what the military buildup has been of Hamas in the Gaza Strip." That's a bunch of bullshit. That is absolute BS. That is absolute BS. The UN agency knows perfectly well whether or not Hamas has been hoarding fuel and hoarding aid. They don't want to say it. Now, it ticks me off, thank you, Amy, because, again, I worked at the United Nations. I was a full-time staffer at the United Nations. I left because it was the most corrupt place I'd ever worked at in my entire life. The United Nations, whenever the UN is being interviewed, keep this in mind. They will not say anything that upsets any of their donors. They are always careful about every country and every donor and everything. We had to scrub maps about, I forget what it even was. It was a map, I think, in Lebanon, because the Japanese were upset, and we had to take off some of the Japanese projects that is illegal by our rules at the UN. We did it anyway because we didn't want to piss off the Japanese. The fact that the UN guy is saying this, he's lying. He knows perfectly well whether Gaza has been hoarding fuel. But the point is, and again, it still is a fair argument to say just because Hamas is hoarding fuel doesn't necessarily mean you cut off fuel to hospitals. That's pretty draconian. So I am sympathetic to that argument, but I am also sympathetic to the argument that you do not want to be providing aid to Hamas right now. So hopefully they can find a way around that. The Economist reports that in the coming weeks, Israeli generals expect this is from The Economist magazine. Israeli generals expect international pressure will force them to revert to a more limited presence inside Gaza, and that the war will shift to raids against specific targets and may take months or even years to conclude. That's very interesting. That is suggesting that Israel is not planning to just invade all of Gaza and occupy all of it, but that they are trying right now to go after some very specific goal right now. And that this said in, what does it say, in months? Oh, coming weeks. In the coming weeks, they're going to be forced to go to a strategy of specific targets and specific attacks, specific, whether it's bombings, whether it's in person. But this sounds like it's the opposite of an occupation strategy, because basically, I think the U.S. has probably talked to them too and said it's just not going to be tenable. So interesting. Let's see what that actually turns into in practice. But it's interesting. Having said that, I've said this from the beginning. Just because Israel does targeted bombings does not mean civilians are going to stop dying. You're going to have lots of civilians dying by targeted bombings as well. That happens during war. It's not going to go away. So just be prepared for that. This was interesting too from CNN. CNN reports today that the U.S. intelligence community believes for now that, and I'm reading this to you, that Iran and its proxies are calibrating their response to Israel's military intervention in Gaza to avoid direct conflict with Israel or the U.S. while still exacting costs on its adversaries. So basically, Iran and its allies, meaning Hezbollah, among others, have decided that they do not want to get into a direct conflict with Israel or the U.S. They're happy being a pain in the butt, right? They're happy Iran is using some of its surrogates in Syria, in Iraq, to attack American military bases, but they're using drones. You know, they injured some troops. One guy died of a heart attack. It has not been a massive attack. And they are basically holding off on doing massive attacks because they don't really want a war with America either, which is good so far. It says the U.S. is also keenly aware that Iran does not maintain perfect control of its umbrella or proxies, in particular over Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, the largest and most capable of the various groups. Hezbollah is an ally of Hamas, the group that attacked Israel on October 7th, and has long positioned itself as fighting against Israel. U.S. officials are deeply concerned that the group's internal politics, Hezbollah's, may cause Hezbollah to escalate simmering tensions. That basically the war goes on, Israel starts attacking more, Israel's invading Gaza more, and Hezbollah feels it has no choice politically but to invade. And CNN, by the way, I was just going to say the mods are getting rid of you. CNN is one of the best news sources in the world, especially when it comes to international stuff. Nobody compares with their reach. What else have I got here? There was another... Oh, yeah. The other final point was Iran knows that if Hezbollah escalates the conflict with Israel or the United States, it would likely provoke direct counterattacks against Iran that could be devastating to it. And that's what I've been saying, too. Israel and the U.S. both have the ability to do devastating damage to Iran. We don't want to get into that kind of a war because it also means Iran might try to do devastating damage to Israel. They might go after American shipping. They might go after, knowing Iran, going after oil coming out of the Persian Gulf. Right? I mean, all this kind of stuff. Oops. All right. Blocking you too. Sorry. Giving an angel his wings. You can always tell the trolls. Bye-bye. The Wagner Group. This was a wild story. I saw this in the Wall Street Journal like an hour ago. Listen to this. The Wagner Group. So the Wagner Group, remember the Russian paramilitary group run by Prigozhin, the guy that Putin basically blew up out of the sky, right? So the Wagner Group still exists. Thank you, Dr. Prince. But they're now, more directly part of the Russian government, right? Their troops seem to work for the Russian military. Thank you, Maddie. I'll get to that in a sec. The Wall Street Journal reports that the Wagner Group plans to provide an air defense system to Hezbollah, the Lebanese militia, U.S. officials say, citing intelligence. I'm going to read you this from the Wall Street Journal. The Russian SA-22 system they plan to send, also called the Pantsir, is mounted on a wheeled military vehicle. The system was designed by Russia to intercept aircraft, drones, and enemy precision-guided munitions. One U.S. official said that Washington hasn't confirmed that the system has been sent, but officials are monitoring discussions involving Wagner and Hezbollah, and officials say the potential delivery is a major concern. That is really screwed up. I mean, it's one thing for Russia to defend its allies or whatever, but for Russia to be giving an air defense system to a terrorist group in the Middle East, I mean, this is how screwed up it is. I mean, this is how screwed up Russia's support is for people in the region. I mean, it's not like they're giving it even to Syria. I mean, Syria is horrific. Assad is the dictator. But like, I get it because he's their guy, but you're giving it to Hezbollah, a terrorist group. And by the way, Israelis, they're doing it to stop you from being able to hit Hezbollah and to stop them from hitting your territories in northern Israel. That is why Putin is doing this. That is why he's giving the anti-aircraft system to Hezbollah, because he wants Hezbollah to be able to kill Israelis. And I swear to God, at some point, Israel has got to turn around and start helping Ukraine in a big way, especially this winter. God knows they can use the help. Now, mind you, Israel needs the help too, so I don't know to what degree Israel has the ability to give Ukraine help now, right? I mean, that is an issue that I appreciate, but, you know, they've got to turn around and start helping Ukraine more. I mean, unfortunately, Russia's proven exactly how much they care about you guys, right? Not one bit. The Wall Street Journal, this was a story that annoys me. We've talked before about oh, sorry, real quick. Maddie had a question. I didn't know the UN had donors. Who's donating to the UN and why? So the way the UN works, since I worked there, I figured this out. The main UN headquarters, okay, like in Washington, in New York, the real cool big square building, rectangular building. The main UN headquarters is financed by countries from around the world, okay? We all pay based on, I think it's based on our GDP, based on the size of our economy. Like the US contribution is something like 22 or 23% or something of the UN's budget for the headquarters, okay? So everybody has like dues that they have to pay. The UN agencies have donors. So where I worked, UNDP, the development program, UNICEF, human rights, refugees, like all the different UN agencies, right? Thank you, M. Fuller. All the UN agencies are funded by donor countries. Thank you, Jonathan. And that's each country that decides to help out additionally. So the US, for example, in addition to the main amount of money we give the UN headquarters, that's that 22% or whatever, we also give some money to UNDP, some money to UNICEF, some money to, right, the High Commission on Refugees or whatever. And the problem is those agencies are beholden to those donors. When I was at UNDP, they're terrified about pissing off any of the donors because they can't afford to lose the money. So they've got to be nice to everybody. Well, how the hell is a UN agency going to talk about climate change, for example, if they can't talk about the individual countries and what they're doing, or wars, right? You're criticizing the wars when some of these countries, I mean, a lot of the big countries, good and bad, give a lot of money to the UN. So that's where the funding to the UN goes. And I'm telling you, because I was inside, they are panicked about pissing. So much of the work inside at headquarters is about raising money from the freaking donors. Like, you know, thank you, Kronos. I can't tell you how much of my stupid job, thank you, Kronos, was having to worry about stupid fundraising. It was just that's the nature of it, unfortunately. But it's obnoxious. So thank you for the super chat question. That is what it is. Hang on, I'm going to get this out. Thank you, Timothy, for that. So Wall Street Journal had another article about the Israeli settlers in the West Bank. Now, these are bad guys, a lot of these people, I will say. The West Bank settlers are the people that I agree with the critics on what they say. These are the guys that Biden came out and criticized last week and said are extremists. Let me read you this from the Wall Street Journal. A surge in violence has hit the West Bank since Hamas's October 7th attacks. Much of it has been directed at Palestinians. Settler attacks. So the settlers are basically Israelis who have moved into the West Bank. West Bank, this territory, lots of Palestinians. Very complicated what's going on there. Israel occupies part of it. Very complicated. Used to belong to Jordan. Jordan didn't give a damn, didn't make a Palestinian state. In principle, if a Palestinian state ever gets formed, an official country, it would be West Bank, it would be Gaza, but parts of the West Bank would probably go to Israel. It's very complicated because Jerusalem's there too. Very complicated. In any case, Israel, at least the conservative governments, the right-wing governments, have been letting settlers go in and basically start to take over occupied territory. So land that does belong to the Palestinians, but Israel, again, occupied it because of wars. Keep in mind, a lot of land that people complain about that Israel is occupying, they are occupying it because they were invaded and the Arab governments tried to kill them and wipe Israel off the map, and the Arab governments failed. And as a result, Israel took some land to protect itself. So, again, as always, things are complicated. Things are very complicated. It's called FAFO in internet memes. F around, find out, right? They invaded, they tried to destroy Israel, they lost land. Having said that, the West Bank is obviously rather particular. I think most people don't think Israel should just annex the West Bank and have it become part of Israel, right? Everyone kind of thinks at least a lot of the West Bank is going to have to become kind of a core of an eventual Palestinian state. Well, the right-wing Israeli governments, Netanyahu, have been sending in these settlers or letting them go in and basically just establish cities, these little towns and villages and everything in Palestinian land. And the idea is they go in there, they kick out the Palestinians, or maybe the Palestinians were already kicked out and they take over the land. And eventually it's like, oh, well, they're squatters, basically. Oh, well, we're here. And what else can you do about it? Right? We set up a town. I guess we're just going to keep it. That's obnoxious. Anyway, this from the Wall Street Journal. Much of the violence since October 7th has been directed at Palestinians. Settler attacks have increased to an average of 7 attacks a day, meaning attacks by Israeli settlers against Palestinians. Much of it has been directed at Palestinians. Settler attacks have increased to an average of 7 attacks a day, compared with 3 a day before October 7th. Israeli troops and armed settlers have killed at least 123 Palestinians. One Israeli soldier was also killed during the same period. That's just in the last 3 weeks. One Israeli soldier was killed. A further 1,000 Palestinians were driven from their homes in the West Bank amid settler attacks, according to the UN. Biden has said that he's concerned. He said the settlers are attacking Palestinians in places they're entitled to be. It has to stop now. And Jake Sullivan, our national security advisor, told Netanyahu he has a responsibility to rein them in. These guys are trouble. These guys are right-wing fanatics. They're the bad guys, I will say. And this is part of the reason, again, I don't like Netanyahu, who's the prime minister, because he's kind of in league with these guys. Saudi Arabia, this was a fascinating story too. Saudi Arabia assured the Biden administration that it is still interested in pursuing an agreement that would normalize relations with Israel after the war with Gaza is over. That's really interesting, because the thinking was that part of the reason that Hamas, if not a large part of the reason that Hamas attacked Israel on October 7th and did the massive, horrific attacks, was because they were concerned that Israel was normalizing relations with more and more countries in the region. Basically, establishing diplomatic relations and no longer being at war, or whatever you want to call it, with more and more Arab governments. And, Saudi Arabia was next on the list. And the thought was they invaded because they knew Israel was going to hit back. They knew there'd be a lot of civilian casualties, and they hoped, thank you, Cindy, it would so piss off Arabs that their governments wouldn't be able to be even risk being normalizing relations with Israel. Interesting that Saudi Arabia is saying, oh no, it's still on the table. That's very interesting, especially to say it now. Like, if you were being kind of jerky about it, you'd say, well, obviously it's not going to happen now. We will revisit it after the war is over. You wouldn't say we're still interested when the war is over. That's very positive of Saudi Arabia to put it that way. And I think this is the final story I've got. France's Europe 1 TV station reports, okay, remember how in Paris a couple days ago, somebody was going around painting stars of David, the symbol of Judaism and Israel, on, thank you, Ava, on Jewish homes and Jewish businesses in Paris. And the idea was to make it look like the Nazis, what the Nazis did, where that's how they would attack Jewish businesses, in the lead up to the Holocaust in Germany. Well, France 1 reports, or Europe 1, that a Moldovan couple was arrested. A couple from Moldova was arrested for doing this. And the couple said that they were directed to do it, thank you, Kronos, by a person in Russia. That's all the information we have from the story, but they were directed by a person in Russia to put the stars up. Now, I had read something the other day, and I'm trying to remember where this was, but it was the Russians previously hiring people to put this kind of propaganda up in, I want to say it was in Europe. Shoot, I'm trying to remember this now. I think this was in Europe. And basically, one of you guys is going to be familiar with this story. It was something that came out in the last week, and that didn't come out in the last week, but that the Russians previously had done this where they pretend to be locals, and they put up horrific propaganda, whether it's swastikas or what. Oh, I know what it was. It was during the Cold War. The Russians did this in West Germany during the Cold War. That's what I'd read, because they wanted to make it look like maybe the 1980s or 1970s. They wanted to make it look like, oh, those West Germans, they're still Nazis. So they had people go around and put swastikas all over the place to make it look like Germany still has in other words, isn't it great that we, Russia, have taken over Eastern Europe and we've taken over East Germany? Because look, there's still Nazis over there in West Germany. So this is a longtime Russian tactic. So I wouldn't be surprised. But it's very interesting that the person said that. Thank you, Kronos. Very interesting. So the last thing, I do have more auction items. I will tell you, I do not have the auction items up yet. Every week I'm gonna start putting them up. Maybe tonight, certainly tomorrow. We've got auction items that we put up from Ukraine every week. Auction them off. The auctions usually end on Wednesday of every week, and 50% of the proceeds we put back in Ukraine for aid. Military aid, humanitarian aid. 50% goes to support my work because I do this full time, as I said. Please do keep the gifts coming, by the way, on TikTok and YouTube because it helps me do this, because it helps me pay the bills. I'm going to show you a few of the auction items anyway because we've got some cool stuff this week. They're not up yet. Otherwise, it'll be on Discord, discord.aravosis.com, but they're not up yet, just so you know. But I've got more of the ornaments. These aren't dented. These are nice. This is a smaller one. I say small, like 4 inches, hand painted from Ukraine, I should say. This one's really pretty. This one I think is gorgeous, of the flowers. You can see this one's 5 inches, which is like 12 centimeters. No, not 12 centimeters. 5 inches is 2 centimeters. No, 12 centimeters. Yeah, 12 centimeters. Very pretty. And this one is really neat. Hang on. This one I think is very pretty. This is another Cossack. Now, so first of all, she wrote on the back the sort of Christmas greeting, the name of the town and the date, but it's a Cossack riding a horse on the front, and mind you, hand painted. Yeah, 5 inches. It's fabulous. Like I said, about 12 centimeters, but really cool. Again, a little hard for you guys on YouTube to see it, but really beautiful. So check these out. Actually, I'll show you a few more. Actually, I will show you a few more things. So this is something very cool we're going to be auctioning. This is from, I've got to double check. I think it's a BMP-3. It's like a personnel carrier that looks like a tank, but not a tank. One of those vehicles, actually, Callum, correct me again. Was it a BMP-3? I forget. It looks like a tank, but it's not a tank. It's one of those things that people often say, oh, they're tanks, but they're not tanks. This, and we've got a picture of the vehicle because Vlad's friends got this in Ukraine. So we've got a picture of the vehicle that it was from, a Russian vehicle, infantry fighting vehicle. This, and we actually, Best Worst Gamers helped me identify it. This is a like running light from the Russian infantry fighting vehicle. It's got the Russian writing on the side. What is it? The GST, whatever that stands for. It's an abbreviation in Russian, like almost like gamma, the GST 64. But this is the light socket. I'll pull it out. This is, and we found pictures of it. The Russian tanks have got, or these vehicles have got 2 really strong lights, almost like headlights. And then higher up, they've got 2 softer lights that I'm told are used at night when, for example, they're using like night vision and stuff like that. Really cool. Anyway, I love this very heavy piece of metal, by the way. But this is really cool. And we've got a picture of the actual vehicle that it came from. I just think it's a neat piece of a Russian vehicle destroyed in Ukraine. I've got another Ukrainian military belt. This one is obviously a formal belt, but I'm forgetting what this is the symbol. Oops, upside down. I'm forgetting what this is the symbol of. I'd have to look and see, but very cool. It is not brass, I will say. I do not think this is brass. I think the newer ones are not brass, just so you know. Stable belt, but it's very cool. Couple more things. One sec. Oh, actually, one of these I love. This woman is a particularly good artist. This is another Christmas ornament with the Petrikivka style, a butterfly. But this woman is just an amazing. This is a different Ukrainian artist than the other one. This woman is her own sort of league on her own. But a beautiful Christmas ornament from Ukraine. One or two other things, and then we'll do questions here. What else? Oh, another bag, hand painted. I forgot what you guys called these. Some kind of, they're the bags that go on your shoulder. But very cool, hand painted with the Ukrainian trident and then flowers. A tote. You can see a hand painting, very cool. I'm not going to put them all up. I've got a number of things today. And let me do one more thing. Yeah, I'll do one more thing. I finally have my last of the Ukrainian hand-painted Easter eggs. This is another goose egg, hand-painted in this. Remember, it's batik. You can see the Ukrainian trident on it. Hollow, hand-painted, but it's a goose egg, so it's actually much larger than a chicken egg. Thank you, Hobbsy. But they're really cool. It's a batik style. They use a pen and they paint it in wax. And then they dip it. And then they take off a little more wax and they dip it again. But I mean, hand-painted this thing. This is from Ukraine. I ordered it especially. They were not cheap. I will say it was not cheap. But very cool. And it comes with a nice little round stand as well. It's very cool. Anyway, lots of other little things, but those are the big things we've got this week. I figured with Christmas coming up, I want to sort of have more things. So, well, I'm auctioning them off. So it'll go for whatever people are willing to pay. But I auction them off over on Discord. It's not set up yet on Discord. I will have some things up tonight, and then the rest of them will go up tomorrow. So join us then for your bids. All right. Anyway, let's get rolling. Pisanka, exactly. Pisanka style. That is exactly right. All right. What do you think of Russia pulling out of the nuclear test ban treaty? I mean, the thing is, the Russians are just trying to be jerks, and they're trying to threaten everything with nukes. Everything with them is nukes, right? And it's just one more nuclear threat from Russia. I don't care. I mean, I know, basically, if they start testing and we need to test, we'll start testing. It'd be nice if neither side did, but my point is, it's not like nuclear testing is going to lead to a nuclear war. You know what I mean? I'm not that worried, but it'd be nice if they weren't such jerks about it. Sure. Yes. I don't know what's going on in Congo, so it would be hard for me to talk to you about what's going on in Congo. So sorry. Oh, wow. Your wife hand painted a bunch of the eggs? Wow. Well, that's like, Wild Hunt Corsetree's mom does these. It's really beautiful. My opinion on nuclear war, I'm against nuclear war. That's my opinion on nuclear war. I don't think we're going to be having a nuclear war anytime soon. Don't worry. Yeah, of course, Elon Musk chimed in. There's a surprise. What else we got, guys? Thank you, Adam. We did something a few weeks ago in Nevada. I'm reading, thank you, Becca, that it may not have actually been a nuclear test. We were testing something else. From what I'm reading, it's not clear it was actually a nuclear test that we did a few weeks ago. Yep, thank you, Hobbsy. Are you against the use of nuclear weapons, even if it was against Hamas? Well, yeah, you're not going to use nuclear weapons against Hamas. No, I think, look, nuclear weapons should be used as a last resort. Either, thank you, Makab, either they're used in retaliation for somebody using nukes, of course, right? Somebody uses nukes, you use nukes back. That is the best way to guarantee that nukes are not used against you, right? That exactly. Roy calls it MAD. That is exactly. It's called mutual assured destruction. It's the theory that if both, for example, U.S. and Russia, if both sides know that we can destroy each other, in other words, Russia knows if they attack us, we will have enough nukes left to attack them, then they won't do it. If the U.S. knows that if we attack Russia with nukes, Russia will have enough nukes left to attack us back, then we won't use them. So that's the idea. So the first thing would be, I am not a fan of using nukes just as a regular weapon, okay? Second of all, as a last resort, if you are about to be wiped out, yes. So in other words, Russia's invading and it looks like Russia might actually be able to take parts of the US, right? Then we nuke them. Yes. Israel, the situation, Israel's got possibly 100 nuclear weapons. People sort of forget about that. In Israel's case, there's enough of an invasion with Gaza, with Hezbollah in the north. The Syrians get involved. The Iranians start attacking. I don't know who else. And Israel looks like they're in trouble. Thank you, Becca. Israel uses a nuke. Yeah. If it comes to, I hate to sort of even ascribe it to Israel. Let me put it this way. If you are some country, and I'm not going to give a name, and the bad guys are about to wipe you off the face of the earth and you have nukes, you will use those nukes. Yes. To stop the bad guys. You will not let the bad guys wipe you off the face of the earth. Yes. But it's going to take a lot to get to that point, because they've got Israel has the US defending it too. So, so there. Well, the problem is, if Israel has nukes, should other Middle Eastern countries too? No, because I don't trust them. First of all, in general, I don't think it is not in our interest for more countries to have nukes. It's not. Obviously, that benefits those of us who have them, of course, but it is not in our interest. The more countries that have nukes, the greater chance it is somebody will use them, period. Right? So it's not like you just don't. I mean, but your question has a kernel of truth to it. If you're an Arab country and Israel has nukes, you want nukes. If you're Iran and Israel has nukes, you want nukes too, because it does make the competitors or the enemies or whatever want to have nukes too. Nadi, I don't know what you're pointing me to, but I have no idea. I have no idea what you're pointing to. Sorry, I'm looking, and your comments before don't mean anything to me. Okay, yeah, I don't know what you're pointing to, unless you're pointing to somebody else, John. Oh. Yeah, that's not totally wrong. I mean, Martin DeYoung is comparing Israeli settlers in the West Bank to Russian settlers in Crimea and Donetsk. It's not an unfair comparison necessarily. Yeah. I mean, the idea is you are settling people permanently in land that, well, here's the problem. Okay, here's the problem. Boundaries do change. See, this is where, and I don't kind of know where you draw the line here. Obviously, boundaries change in history, right? All of our countries were not what they were before. Some of them were bigger, some of them were smaller, some of them have grown over time, right? We've taken other people's lands. By the way, everybody has taken somebody else's land at some point, right? I mean, everybody, the Indians, the Native Americans did it too. Everybody took somebody's land. At some point, you have to accept those changes. If you go back a couple hundred years, right? You say Europe, in Europe, the boundaries changed a lot in World War II. Most of it, probably most of it, we say, oh, well, right? France and Germany, territory went back and forth. At this point, what are you going to do? Poland lost some land. What are you going to do, right? So there is that aspect of it, first of all, that at some point you have to accept that you lost land in war. It's not coming back and people can settle it. Yes. Oh, U.S. and Mexico, same thing. Yeah. Right. But there's also the issue of if the land isn't settled, if your occupation of it isn't really settled, right? Then, for example, Russia with Crimea, Russia with southeastern Ukraine, they're occupying it. Nobody accepts that as sort of settled at this point that that's part of Russia. Then that's not good. Same thing with the settlers in the West Bank. People don't really accept that the parts that, at least some of the parts, I guess they're settling in, are accepted now that this is Israeli territory. They're just doing it to be jerks and to try to make it happen by fiat, that they basically, oh, well, if we squat on the land enough, it becomes ours. So, but as I said, sometimes you win land in war and sometimes you get to keep it if the other guy attacks you. So it's an interesting question actually for sort of international legal experts or whatever else, which is what's the difference between like illegally occupying and sort of a spoils of war thing, I don't know. Hey, Naughty. Yeah, Twitch is always a little. Well, Twitch sometimes has around 30. It depends. What Twitch? Yeah, Twitch is 9 or 10 today. Yeah, yeah. What else we got, guys? What else we got? Yeah, Estonia never got its land back from Russia. No, exactly. I mean, lots of that stuff. Greeks and Turkey. We'd like some of our land back too. I mean, you know. Okay, yeah, you're leaving. Okay. Well, somebody on TikTok or somebody on Twitter just got their wings. That was pretty weird. That was pretty weird. Not even going to repeat what that idiot was writing. Jesus Christ. I'm seeing what else we got. What other guys? Sasha, not yet. Sasha's begging me for water already. You got to wait a little bit, Sasha. If she starts screaming, I'll give her some water. Actually, we're doing pretty well tonight. We may even be able to finally do a little hanging out on Discord tonight, probably. Is there so much support for BRICS? I don't know. Oh, 1 second. The dog wants a little water. One moment. All right, I'll get you water. I will get you water. Okay. Goofball, a little early. No, I'm not doing your teeth yet. No. Yeah, she's cute. She was begging for water, but what she really wanted me was to brush her teeth, because after I brush her teeth, she gets a treat. So I went to give her water, and she looked away from the water and looked at me like, I want my treat. It's like, Anyway, what else we got? Yeah, nothing more on the U.S. bases. I mean, the number is up to 28 or 29 that we know of U.S. bases that have been attacked in Syria and Iraq by Iranian proxies, but no more information yet on sort of injuries or anything else. Do I see a solution for the conflict in Israel? No. I mean, maybe someday, but I mean, this has been going on forever, and this is just a continuation of what's been going on before. I mean, this is much worse, but this is a continuation of what's been happening before. So, I mean, well, I give her a greenie, user 829. So I figure the greenie isn't a bad thing to give her afterwards. You know what I mean? Supposedly it helps too. But I thought about that, giving it to her before. Yeah. Callum wants a treat. Okay. I'll brush your teeth too, Callum. Anyway, what else we got, guys? What else we got? Do I think China's going to get involved? I mean, I don't see China getting involved with the Middle East, though. I mean, what I mean is China's been trying to sort of make its mark in the Middle East and become more important. But I don't see, who knows, I guess. I mean, could China start giving, I guess China could start giving weapons or something if they wanted to. I don't know to whom, but they could, I suppose, but I'm not convinced China's going to, it's not really, for example, I mean, one of the things that I'd read the other day, which was interesting, is that the Biden administration was urging China to weigh in with Iran to tell them to don't go nuts, because if you go nuts, America's going nuts. Because if Iran enters the war and we start attacking Iran and everything, Iran will probably try, like they did before, will probably try to, thank you, Courtney, try to take out oil in the Middle East, oil shipping, to basically stop the Persian Gulf from exporting oil, which would be a huge deal. It would hurt, I was reading something the other day, oil prices, hey, Mavili, oil prices could go up to $150 a barrel, which is a horrific, 50% plus increase. So that's a concern of Iran entering the war. So the reason the administration was able to get China to weigh in with Iran is because China relies on that oil too, and China can't afford to have that oil go up in price, right? So China doesn't necessarily want a war, Oh, you are so leaving. Goodbye. Angel gets its wings. La 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 la. Anyway, what else we got, guys? I saw that, and I didn't see he was visiting here. Is he visiting here? I saw that President Xi and Biden might be meeting in the next month, but I didn't see where or what. But the leader of China, which is good. Always good to meet and talk. Do I think Iran will join the war? I mean, the thing is, it's dangerous maybe. I think it's stupid of them to do it, but sometimes they do stupid, because the U.S. will defend Israel. I mean, we will. So, Iran enters the war, we start entering the war more, Well, and they could try to cut down the world's oil, but if they try to cut down the oil, we may really bomb the hell out of Iran this time. I don't know. But I think Iran kind of knows that too. I don't think Iran wants it. I just think Iran's smart enough to know. I mean, again, I shouldn't say that, because I feel like sometimes Iran gets kind of a North Korea vibe to it. They just like to be dicks sometimes, it's just like, whatever. So who knows, because of the religious thing. What else we got, guys? They're meeting in San Francisco. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Well, that's good then. Yeah, no, that's good. So Xi, the premier of China, and Biden are going to be meeting in San Francisco. Well, that's good. Again, talking, never a bad thing. Well, we know Russia's been able to circumvent the U.S. and European sanctions, which is why they keep amending the sanctions. But, well, how many more children will die? A lot on all sides. Hey, Jeremy, thank you. A lot, because of what religious thing? Fundamentalist Islam. Do I think Israel's committing war crimes? Maybe. But I'm not sure what choice Israel has, which is what confuses it for me. It was a Republican senator, actually, which I didn't like his quote at the time, but it was an interesting quote. And he was talking about doing something for, responding to 9/11 or whatever it was. And he was talking about how the Constitution wasn't a suicide pact, meaning, now, of course, he was saying we should violate the Constitution if it matters for our national defense. But I think it's a very interesting question. Okay, let me put it this way. I've told you guys this story before. I was teaching at, I did oral exams at Georgetown. I went to Georgetown School of Foreign Service, the master's program and law degree. And I was asked back, which I would love to do. I offered myself to go back and help with the oral exams for the graduating master's students. And I asked one of the students, and I said, is terrorism ever justified? And the student pretty much said no. And I said, well, what about if, let's take you back to the Soviet years. The Soviet Union, let's say they actually invaded America, and they were doing to America what they're doing to Ukraine, right? They were taking over our land. They were planning on literally wiping out our culture. They were killing people. They were stealing our children and turning them into Russians, right? The whole thing. If the Soviets were occupying America with the intent of wiping our country out entirely, you wouldn't, bomb supermarkets where the Soviet families are going, thank you, etc. And I got a different answer. Then I said, okay, what about Israel then? Would you approve of it there? Like bombing Israel? And I got a different answer. And I think, and I just don't know, because I think even for myself, I may waver. I think we've got these rules. Generally speaking, we do like it when people abide by the rules. We get upset when Russia breaks the rules, especially. But I also think that it gets interesting. It gets, again, it's a very interesting, I don't know. I'm very, like I said, I'm very divided on not on war crimes. I don't like war crimes, but I think, like I said, if my country were, taken over by the Russians, I'd probably be breaking some laws. Thank you, Stevie. So it's a tough It's a tough issue. It's a tough issue. But the thing is, all isn't fair in love and war. That's the problem. And Booger's saying all is fair in love and war. The problem is it's really not. Like, I mean, the military folks will tell you it really isn't. Like, they're really not supposed to break the rules. Like, it's a big deal for them, but also when you're desperate, which both sides could use that argument. I mean, I recognize that when you're desperate, you start to break the rules. It's very, now, having said that, when you go and are joyously blowing the heads off babies, there's something wrong with you, right? There's something. When you call your dad on the phone and say, Dad, I killed 10 Jews today. Aren't you proud of me? That's effed up, right? So there's a difference here, right? I mean, if you're really excited about murdering babies and it gets you kind of high that you did it, there's something wrong with you. That's the issue. So that's part of it too. I mean, even with Israel and the civilian casualties, if Israel were causing civilian casualties in Gaza and going, what? We killed babies? This is great, right? That would be horrific. I mean, that would be a whole other level of problem. And you've got Hamas being very happy about killing babies. The Israelis are not. The Israelis have not been saying yes about killing civilians. They may have been killing civilians. I'm not saying that's good, but they're not exactly cheering about it. Hamas is cheering about it. That is an extra level of screwed up. We're back to the Russian talking points again. You're a liar. Hamas wasn't. I mean, they were ecstatic about what they did. They were literally cheering, Anyway, I'm not responding to the trolls today. So, thank you, Sly. There were several reports that the Hamas soldiers were using drugs that day. Yes. Thank you, Sivan. Thank you for the hearts and more hearts. What else we got, guys? Yep. Yeah. See, Fred asks an excellent question about Ukraine. I'm curious how the Soviet-Afghan war saw 15,000 Soviets killed, which is correct, and it led to mass protests in the Soviet Union, and yet the Russian casualties in Ukraine have been estimated 100,000, or actually maybe even 200,000. It's huge, and barely any protests. I don't know. I don't know. Now, maybe because the war or Soviet invasion of Afghanistan went on for 10 years. Maybe there was more time for it to percolate. It's only been a year and a half. But if 150,000 Russians are dead, that's and they think possibly like 300, who knows how many injured, 300,000 injured, right? And I mean, injuries, bad injuries. Some of these guys lose their arms, other things. That means Russian society is seeing this. They're hearing about their dead neighbors, their dead relatives. They're seeing, young men without limbs, right? I mean, we saw that here in Washington about 10 years ago. I would see difference. I would see the young men in Washington, D.C. riding down the street like on a bicycle with no arm. A guy in my apartment building, no legs. And you're 23, 25 years old, healthy, whatever, and you're missing a limb, and seeing them a lot. And you're going, this is because of the war, right? So in Russia, if you've got 150,000 dead and 300,000 injured, it's a country, Russia's less than half the size of America, they're seeing it. But I don't know. Now this was something that, Zaluzhny, the Ukrainian general, mentioned in his interview with The Economist. He said, we made the mistake of assuming that if the Russians lost 150,000 troops, it would make them turn against the war. And they didn't, I don't know. But I think also part of this is Russian society. The Russians don't rise up very much, I mean, they don't rise up very much, unfortunately, And it could be the protests. Yeah, Titch is saying, I think the penalties for protest in Russia are so severe that the people have become cautious in Russia. I think so. Also, there's the, people will tell you there's like the Russian tradition of the people and the government have sort of an agreement, like you leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. So like, as long as my day-to-day life isn't affected, I don't care what you do. Except, of course, your day-to-day life could be affected if this many soldiers are killed and wounded, because that does affect your family. But I think there's just an aspect of keep your head low and, carry on kind of thing with the Russians, I mean, I'm not convinced Putin's dead. Who knows? Could be. Well, the UN, Noy says, do you think the UN isn't supporting Israel because it's trying to gain universal power with Russia? Israelis will tell you that they're convinced that the UN is anti-Semitic and hates Israel. There are certainly a lot of countries in the UN that don't like Israel. At the same time, on the face of it, when civilians are dying, the UN generally doesn't like it when civilians are getting killed in war. Okay. So thank you, Kronos. That is often a legitimate concern of the UN. They don't like it when civilians get killed. So, I take that at face value, right? But at the same time, the UN does have a history of being anti-Israel. So there's that too, Anyway, all right, guys, you know what? I think I'm going to go. I think we've done this for an hour and 20 minutes. Let's go to Discord for a little bit because we haven't gone to Discord in so long. Let's try it out for at least a little bit. It's discord.aravosis.com. I don't have any auctions up, but like I said, at least we can hang and chat. Go over there and you will see, thank you, Crazy American and Kronos. You will see in Mark Star, you will see in the upper left, John's after party. And I will be hanging. When you get there, put up the volume. Put the volume up. And I will be talking. You will all be typing. And let's do that. All right. So go join me over there. It's Aravosis. Discord.aravosis.com. Yep. Dobry nochi vsim. All right. Thank you. Who is that? Super Hornet for the heart. And let's do it. Otherwise, I'll see you guys tomorrow night. Friday, 6 p.m. Eastern, we will do this again, cover the latest from Israel and Ukraine. And then Saturday morning, remember, we will have my coffee talk an hour earlier. No recap. Nah. Sometimes the recap's hard because there's just so much news. Like this was 7 pages worth of stuff. We'll do, and I gotta do a video. I've got to do some videos on TikTok after this too. So I don't want to go too late. I know it's early on Saturday because I've got an 11 a.m. So it's 10 a.m. Eastern time. Remember, we have not changed our time yet. We don't do that till Sunday. So like right now it's 7:24 p.m. in Washington. So keep that in mind. And otherwise join me tomorrow night. So yeah, let's go over there for a little bit right now. And then not too long because I've got to do more videos too. All right, guys. So, all right, Discord. Oh boy. How do you join Discord? It's not easy. You kind of need to join, to buy an app and it's free. You download the app on your phone for free. Discord, and then you want to look for Aravosis. You can Google my name and it should take you to our community. And again, you can join for free. It's not the easiest thing to figure out. See you, Kronos, unfortunately. But it's discord.aravosis.com or just Google Aravosis and you should find it. And like I said, we'll be top left. You'll see John's after party. Okay, guys. Nope, no recap. We're going over there at 7:25. All right, see you guys. Go to Discord.